Hi, I'm Pastor Steve, and I'd like to talk to you just for a second about the discussion we're having online in respect to the question about what Jesus himself would have looked like. I posted several videos on several social media platforms discussing the appearance of Jesus and how he is represented. And I used this picture from 1942, which depicts Jesus clearly as a Caucasian male. This picture, we see white skin, we see blonde hair, we see blue eyes, and very much European facial features. And this is the representation of Jesus, a representation among many others that were commonly used in churches all over the United States, especially going back in the area around the mid 20th century. Now, the question we've had online, which I consider to be really important, why does this matter? Nobody knows what Jesus looked like, and so his appearance should be irrelevant to the discussion. And I really appreciate that comment. It was really very well placed. The question, though, is why does it matter that he was commonly represented as a European male? What's up with that, and what's it about? Well, in the history of that time period, the Apostle Paul was the main designer and builder of the Christian faith as we know it. If you just look at your New Testament and count the number of pages in the New Testament that are seen to have some connection to the Apostle Paul and the Pauline Gentile mission, which happened quite a few years after the death and resurrection of Jesus. Now, Paul had this mission, and if you look at the pages of the New Testament, not only would you include the epistles of Paul, Romans, 1 Corinthians, 2 Corinthians, Galatians, and so forth, but you also need to include the books of Luke and Acts in the Pauline corpus, because somewhere around the 16th chapter of the book of Acts, the narrator starts saying we went here and we went there and we went here and we went there, describing the missionary journeys of St. Paul. And Paul really is the primary apostle whose acts are discussed in the book of Acts. It could just as easily have been called the Acts of Paul. Now, you can also add in the context of this Gentile mission, this mission to the Europeans, this desire to bring this gospel message west into Europe, you can also add the profoundly anti-Semitic passages in the gospel according to Matthew, such as the famous blood guilt passage, his blood be on us and our children, a passage which was used to justify the most egregious acts of anti-Semitism throughout the ages. That anti-Semitic turn that you find in Matthew's gospel, and then it's also carried on in various more subtle ways throughout the other gospels as well. But that text was generated in the heated conflict that was going on around the Jewish war, around 70 CE, when that war came to its conclusion, when, according to Josephus, Jesus ben Ananias died on the wall of Jerusalem, being struck by a rock from a Roman catapult during the siege of Jerusalem. Now, that's 70 CE. That's quite a few years after the events that are recorded in the Gospels, which are normally thought of to have occurred somewhere around 30 to 33 in the Common Era. Now, the point I want to make about the representation of Jesus in the Pauline corpus and in the Gospels is that he was represented as a Hellenistic God-man, a God come down from heaven to walk the earth. I'd like to read you a passage very briefly from that I found when I was in college years ago. We read this play, and it starts out in this beautiful Greek. It says, Hego Dios paistein de thebaion chona, Dionysos hontikte pothekad mukore. It says, I have come to this Theban land, the Son of God. When I read that, those words just jumped right off the page at me. I have come, the Son of God, to this land of Thebes. Now, we're writing about the Son of God coming to Thebes, but we're writing in 405 BC in Eusebius, and we're writing about Dionysus, because the play I just read from is Euripides' Bacchae. The Bacchae being the celebration of Dionysus, the god of wine. And Dionysus was represented by the Greeks as the Son of God. And it's interesting too, because in the New Covenant, as described by Paul, the New Covenant is celebrated with bread and wine, and that fit hand in glove into Hellenistic mystery religions at that time. The God-man, the imbibing of the blood and body of the God-man, very Greco-Roman. And that was very distinct from a more Hebrew, Jewish way of looking at things, which was far less spiritual and a lot more having to do with down-to-earth, practical, meaningful conduct, how we would live our lives. The law, the Torah, teaching us basic things like to wash, to be pure, to eat carefully, to live our lives according to a disciplined, ordered process. And that's the Jewish approach. And that Jewish approach, in that Jewish approach, the Messiah of God would come, and the Messiah would be the ruler who would lead the people forward. The incredible practical union of a righteous king and a righteous priest working together to lead the people in ritual purity. That was the Jewish way. The Greek way was a lot more spiritual, a lot more abstract, that the God-man would be worshipped and the God-man would show the people the way they needed to go. Now, this is just the origins of the faith, not making any value judgments one way or the other about how it happened, just to say that there is a representation as Jesus came to be represented as the Hellenistic God-man. It shed, especially in history, as we go forward into the colonial era of history, after the Middle Ages, through the Reformation, the discovery of the New World, the settlement of the New World, and the colonial period. By that point in history, the white male Euro supremacy had taken over in Western Europe, leading Europeans to totally destroy indigenous lands. Look what happened to Africa, to Mother Africa, where all humanity originated, where the most ancient human remains ever found were found in Africa. That's why I refer to Africa as Mother Africa. There in Mother Africa, the Europeans came, the French, the Germans, they colonized the place. They enslaved the population, just shipped them off to be common laborers. And that it wasn't just in Africa. That's just one point where that is made. The idea of Euro supremacy, the supremacy of the Nordic male, and that individual's ability to be, if you will, following in the footsteps of the represented God-man. Doing that led to a lot of atrocities. That led to a lot of horror. That led to a lot of very difficult things happening, which we need to deal with. We just need to understand it. So I am suggesting that in our history of how our religion has been articulated and represented to us, there are many, many aspects that lend credence to structural racism. Structural racism. That is a point that really seriously needs to get thought about. I thank you for watching this. I think I've prattled on long enough for this video. Please comment. Let me know what you think. Let me know how this discussion looks to you. Your comments are very valuable, and I want to validate whomever you are, regardless of your faith background, as you examine these points of history, and we can have conversation about it. So please give it a thumbs up. Go to my website, pastorsteve.faith. Take a look at the anchor essay, which is Jesus and Alternative History. And take a look at the other essays that are there that are more into the philosophy of knowledge and how groups disagree with each other over the same data set, looking at things, and one group interprets it this way, the other group interprets it that way. Take a look, and thank you so much for watching.